I was 11 years old, standing on my grandmother's porch, with nothing but a single suitcase and tears I refused to let fall. Behind me, my father's truck was already pulling away, and he never once looked back through that rear window. That morning started as my birthday, but it ended as the day I learned that some people who are supposed to love you unconditionally will throw you away the moment it becomes inconvenient. My stepmom had finally gotten what she wanted. But what she did not know was that 17 years later, karma would come knocking on their door, and this time I would be the one driving away. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that will make you think twice about family. Loyalty. Trust me, you will want to stick around for how this all turns out. Looking back now, I realize those early years with just my dad were probably the happiest of my childhood. After my mom died in a car accident when I was 4, it was just David and me against the world. We lived in this tiny two-bedroom apartment in suburban Ohio, and honestly, we made it work better than most families with way more money and space. My dad worked construction, which meant early mornings and dirty boots by the door every evening. But no matter how exhausted he was, he always had time for me. Saturday mornings were our sacred tradition. We would drive out to Lake Erie with his old fishing poles and a cooler full of sandwiches. I was terrible at fishing, always getting my line tangled or scaring away the fish by talking too loud, but Dad never seemed to mind. He would just laugh and help me untangle everything, telling me stories about when he was my age. Those weekend baseball games were magic too. Dad would pick me up from school on Fridays, and we would drive 2 hours to Cleveland to catch the Indians play. I still remember the smell of hot dogs and the sound of his voice explaining every play, even though I barely understood half of what was happening. He bought me my first glove at one of those games, this little brown leather thing that was way too big for my hands. I wore it everywhere for months, even to bed sometimes. The bedtime stories were what I treasured most, though. Dad was not much of a reader, but he had this incredible imagination. He would make up these elaborate adventures about a brave knight named Sir Chandler who went on quests to save dragons from mean princesses. Looking back, I think he was trying to flip the script on traditional fairy tales, teaching me that sometimes the supposed monsters are just misunderstood. Those stories always ended with Sir Chandler finding a way to solve problems without fighting, usually by listening and being kind. Everything changed when I turned 8. Dad started going to this little diner downtown every Sunday morning for breakfast instead of making pancakes at home like we used to. That is where he met Jessica. She was waitressing there, this blonde woman with a bright smile and a teenage daughter named Amber from a previous marriage. At first, I thought Jessica was pretty cool. She would remember that I liked extra syrup on my pancakes and would sneak me cookies from the diner kitchen when the manager was not looking. The courtship happened faster than my 8-year-old brain could really process. One day, Dad was mentioning this nice lady from the diner, and 6 months later, they were getting married at the courthouse with just me, Amber, and Jessica's sister as witnesses. I remember feeling excited about having a bigger family. Amber was 15, which seemed incredibly grown up to me, and I thought having an older sister would be amazing. We moved into Jessica's house that summer, and it felt like stepping into a completely different world. Her place was this 3-bedroom ranch-style home with actual carpet instead of the worn linoleum we had in our apartment. She had a big backyard with a swing set that Amber had outgrown, and there was a finished basement where we could watch movies on rainy days. For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect, but then I started noticing little things that made my stomach feel weird. Jessica's smile would disappear the moment Dad left the room, replaced by this cold, calculating look. She would make these comments that sounded nice on the surface, but felt mean underneath. When Dad complimented my drawing, she would say something like, "Oh, that is very creative, Chandler, though. I think you colored outside the lines quite a bit." When I spilled juice at dinner, she would sigh dramatically and say, "Accidents happen, but we really need to be more careful with Mommy's nice tablecloth." Amber picked up on her mother's attitude quickly. She started treating me like I was some annoying little kid who had invaded their space, which I guess from her perspective I had. She would roll her eyes whenever I talked during dinner, and would complain loudly if I wanted to watch cartoons when she wanted MTV. Jessica always took Amber's side in any disagreement, telling Dad that I needed to learn to share and be more considerate of others. The worst part was watching my relationship with Dad slowly change. Jessica had this subtle way of undermining me that was almost impossible to prove. She would tell Dad about things I supposedly did wrong when he was not home, but she would phrase it like she was trying to protect me. I hate to mention this, David, but Chandler was a bit disrespectful to me today when I asked him to clean his room. I know he is still adjusting, so I did not want to make a big deal of it, but I thought you should know. My grades started slipping that year, which gave Jessica even more ammunition. I went from being a solid B student to barely scraping by with C's and D's. The truth was, I was spending so much energy walking on eggshells at home that I could not focus on homework. But every time Dad saw my report card, Jessica would be right there with some gentle suggestion about how maybe I needed more structure or stricter rules about television time. The house that had seemed so wonderful at first began to feel like a prison where I was always doing something wrong even when I tried my best to be good. By the time I turned 9, Jessica's campaign to turn my father against me had shifted into high gear. What started as subtle manipulation evolved into outright lies and calculated schemes designed to make me look like a problem child. The worst part was how good she was at it. Every accusation came wrapped in false concern. Every lie delivered with perfect timing when Dad was already stressed from work. The first major incident happened on a Tuesday evening in October. I came home from school to find Jessica standing in the kitchen with tears in her eyes, holding her empty purse. When Dad walked through the door 20 minutes later, she launched into this performance about how $20 had gone missing from her wallet money she needed for groceries that week. She kept saying she did not want to accuse anyone, but the money had been there that morning, and she had only left her purse unattended when she went to do laundry. I swore up and down that I had not touched her purse, but Dad's expression grew darker with each of my denials. Jessica played her part perfectly, telling him that maybe I had just borrowed the money and forgotten to ask that kids sometimes do things without thinking them through. Her fake forgiveness made me look even more guilty. I got grounded for 2 weeks and had to do extra chores to earn back the $20 I never stole. 3 weeks later, her expensive crystal vase mysteriously shattered while I was home alone after school. Jessica discovered it when she got back from taking Amber to dance practice, the pieces scattered across the hardwood floor in the living room. When Dad asked what happened, I honestly told him I had no idea. I had been in my room doing homework the whole time and never even went into the living room. But Jessica found it suspicious that the vase would just fall off the mantel by itself, especially since it had been sitting there safely for 3 years. That night I heard them arguing through the thin walls. Dad was starting to sound frustrated, not with Jessica, but with me. "I do not know what is going on with him lately, Jess. He never used to lie like this." Her response was perfectly calculated. "I think he is just having trouble adjusting to sharing you with another family. Maybe we should look into counseling or something. I just want what is best for him." Amber became Jessica's perfect accomplice in this psychological warfare. At 15, she was old enough to understand exactly what her mother was doing, and mean enough to enjoy participating. They developed this tag team approach where Amber would do something to provoke me. Then Jessica would swoop in to comfort her when I inevitably reacted. If I raised my voice or got frustrated, Jessica would tell Dad that I had been aggressive with Amber, that she was worried about my anger issues. The financial stress from Dad's struggling construction business made everything worse. Work was getting scarce, and he was constantly worried about making the mortgage payments on Jessica's house. When people are stressed about money, they have less patience for dealing with family drama. Jessica used this to her advantage, frequently mentioning how much easier things would be if she did not have to worry about my behavioral problems on top of everything else. Meanwhile, my only refuge was the twice-monthly visits to see my grandmother Rose, who lived about 30 minutes away. Grandma Rose had raised my dad as a single mother after his father left when Dad was 12, so she knew something about family drama. From day one, she saw right through Jessica's act. During our visits, she would ask me gentle questions about life at home, and I could tell from her expressions that she did not believe Jessica's version of events. "That woman has got her claws in your daddy, something fierce," she told me one Saturday while we were baking cookies. "But do not you worry, sweetheart. The truth has a way of coming out eventually." Grandma Rose tried talking to Dad several times, warning him that Jessica was manipulating the situation, but he was so desperately in love and so afraid of losing his new wife that he refused to listen. My behavior actually did start deteriorating under the constant stress and false accusations. When you are told you are a liar and a troublemaker every day, Part of you eventually starts to believe it. I began acting out at school, getting into arguments with teachers and falling behind in my studies. This gave Jessica even more evidence to present to my father about my supposed problems. The final straw came during my 10th birthday party. Jessica had planned this elaborate celebration, inviting Amber's friends and several kids from my class. Everything was going perfectly until someone noticed that money was missing from Jessica's coworker's purse. Later that evening, after all the guests had gone home, Jessica discovered a $20 bill tucked inside my backpack while she was cleaning up wrapping paper. The look of disappointment and disgust on my father's face that night is burned into my memory forever. He did not yell or scream. Instead, he just looked at me with this profound sadness and said, "I do not know who you are anymore, Chandler. This is not how I raised you." Jessica stood behind him with her hand on his shoulder, playing the role of supportive stepmother, dealing with her difficult stepchild. That night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, I heard Jessica deliver her ultimatum through the thin walls. "David, I love you, but I cannot keep living like this. Amber is starting to act out because of all the drama, and I am constantly stressed about what Chandler might do next. Something has to change. It is either him or me." I knew then that my days in that house were numbered, but I had no idea how quickly everything would fall apart. The morning of my 11th birthday started like any other day, except Dad woke me up earlier than usual. He was sitting on the edge of my bed with this strange expression on his face, like he was trying to solve a complicated math problem in his head. "Get up and pack a bag, son," he said quietly. "Just some clothes and your important stuff." My sleepy brain immediately jumped to the most exciting possibility. "Are we going on a trip for my birthday?" I asked, suddenly wide awake. Maybe this was some kind of surprise adventure like the camping trips we used to take before Jessica and Amber came into our lives. For a few precious moments, I let myself believe that my dad had finally realized what was happening and was taking me away from all the drama. The car ride to Grandma Rose's house was the longest 30 minutes of my life. Dad kept his eyes focused on the road, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. The radio was off, and the only sound was the hum of the engine and my increasingly panicked breathing as I started to understand that this was not a birthday surprise. "Dad, where are we going?" I finally asked when we turned onto Grandma's street. He pulled into her driveway and turned off the engine, but did not look at me. "Chandler, I cannot handle this anymore. Jessica and I need space to work on our marriage, and you are going to stay with Grandma Rose for a while." The word while hit me like a physical blow. Not for the weekend, not for a few days, but for a while, which in grown-up speak clearly meant forever. "But Dad, it is my birthday," I whispered, as if that fact alone could change his mind. "I know son and I am sorry about the timing, but this is what needs to happen right now." Grandma Rose must have been watching from her kitchen window, because she was already standing on the front porch when we got out of the car. Her face was a mixture of shock and fury as she realized what was happening. "David Michael Thompson," she said in that voice that used to make him straighten up as a kid, "what in the hell do you think you are doing?" Dad could not even look at her. He just handed her my suitcase and mumbled something about how this was temporary, how he needed time to figure things out. Grandma Rose was having none of it. "You are abandoning your son on his birthday because that manipulative woman told you to. I raised you better than this." "Mom, you do not understand the situation," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I understand plenty," she shot back. "I understand that you are choosing a woman you have known for 2 years over the boy you have raised for 11. I understand that you are breaking that child's heart because you are too blind to see what Jessica really is." Dad promised he would visit, promised. This was just temporary, promised a lot of things that we both knew were lies, even as he said them. Then he got in his truck and drove away without looking back, leaving me standing on that porch feeling more abandoned and unwanted than any 11-year-old should ever feel. Grandma Rose wrapped her arms around me as I finally let the tears fall. "Come on inside, birthday boy," she said softly. "Let us see what we can do to salvage this day." But the damage was already done. Over the next few months, I called Dad dozens of times, but Jessica always answered the phone. Sometimes she would claim he was not home, sometimes she would say he was too busy to talk, and sometimes she would just hang up without saying anything at all. Through small-town gossip, I learned that Jessica and Dad had another baby, a son they named Tyler. Social media showed me pictures of their perfect little family, Dad pushing Tyler on a swing, Jessica feeding him birthday cake, Amber holding her baby brother at Christmas. They looked so happy without me. Starting at a new school mid-semester was brutal. I was the weird kid whose dad did not want him the charity case living with his grandmother. I got into fights with kids who made comments about my situation, and my grades went from bad to worse. I was angry at everyone and everything, but mostly I was angry at myself for not being good enough to keep my own father. At 12 years old, I hit rock bottom. I spent hours planning elaborate fantasies about running away, maybe hitchhiking to California or hiding out in the woods until Dad realized his mistake and came looking for me. The only thing that stopped me was the thought of what it would do to Grandma Rose, who was already working double shifts at the local grocery store to support both of us. Seeing those family photos of Dad, Jessica, Amber, and baby Tyler was like being stabbed in the heart over and over again. They had erased me so completely from their lives that it was like I had never existed. Dad looked genuinely happy in those pictures, happier than I remembered him being when it was just the two of us. Maybe Jessica had been right all along. Maybe I really was the problem. Grandma Rose saved my life, though it took me years to realize it. After watching me spiral into depression and anger for months, she made an appointment with Mr. Patterson, a counselor in town who had a reputation for helping troubled kids. I resisted at first, convinced that therapy was just another way of confirming that something was wrong with me. But Mr. Patterson had this calm, patient way of helping me untangle all the emotions I had been carrying around. Anger is just hurt wearing a disguise, he told me during one of our early sessions. The question is not whether you have a right to be angry. You absolutely do. The question is what you are going to do with that anger. Slowly, I learned to channel my rage into motivation instead of self-destruction. If Dad thought I was going to amount to nothing without him, I would prove him wrong. I threw myself into my studies with the intensity of someone trying to climb out of a deep hole. By 8th grade, I was back on the honor roll. By high school, I was taking advanced placement classes and working a part-time job at the local computer repair shop to help Grandma Rose with expenses. That job changed everything for me. I discovered I had a natural talent for understanding how computers worked, and more importantly, I found something I was genuinely passionate about. While other kids were playing video games, I was learning programming languages and building websites. Technology became my escape, and eventually my ticket to a better life. High school was a blur of academic achievements and scholarship applications. I graduated as valedictorian of my class, earning a full ride to the State University for computer science. Dad did not come to my graduation ceremony despite Grandma Rose sending him an invitation. I told myself I did not care, but seeing other families celebrating their kids while I only had my grandmother there was another reminder of what I had lost. College opened up a whole new world for me. I landed internships at major tech companies during summers, built an impressive resume, and started to believe that maybe I could have a successful life despite my rocky start. Grandma Rose was so proud of my achievements, but I could see that the years of working extra shifts to support me were taking their toll on her health. After graduation, I got job offers from several Silicon Valley startups. The salary they offered seemed like monopoly money compared to what Grandma Rose made at the grocery store. I took the highest offer and immediately moved her out to California so she could retire, and I could take care of her for a change. We bought a little house in a quiet neighborhood, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was winning. My career took off faster than I had ever imagined. Within 3 years, I was promoted to lead developer, earning more money than Dad had made in his best years of construction work. I bought a beautiful house with a view of the bay, drove a car that cost more than most people's annual salary, and started dating Sarah, an amazing woman I met through work, who came from the kind of loving, supportive family I had always dreamed about. Sarah helped me work through a lot of the abandonment issues I had been carrying around. She encouraged me to continue therapy and helped me understand that what happened with Dad and Jessica was not a reflection of my worth as a person. Her family welcomed me with open arms, treating me like the son they never had. For the first time since I was 8 years old, I felt like I belonged somewhere. When Grandma Rose was diagnosed with cancer at 76, I took a leave of absence from work to be her primary caregiver. She had given me everything when I had nothing, and I was not about to let her face this battle alone. We had 2 beautiful years together before she passed away peacefully in her sleep at 78. I held her hand that last night, and she told me how proud she was of the man I had become. The funeral was small, just me, Sarah, a few of Grandma Rose's friends from work, and surprisingly Dad. He showed up uninvited, looking older and more worn down than I remembered. He tried to approach me after the service, but I walked right past him without acknowledgement. I had nothing to say to the man who had abandoned me when I needed him most. Sarah and I got engaged 6 months later. As I started planning our wedding and thinking about the family we wanted to build together, I realized that I had created something Jessica and Dad could never touch or destroy. I had built a life filled with people who truly valued me, people who would never throw me away when things got difficult. The success story of my transformation started making its way through hometown social media networks. Old classmates would comment on my posts about work achievements or travel photos with Sarah, saying things like, "Wow, remember when Chandler was that angry kid whose dad kicked him out?" The narrative was changing from poor abandoned child to guy who overcame everything and made it big. I have to admit there was some satisfaction in that shift. But the real victory was not the money, or the career, or even the revenge fantasies I used to have. The real victory was the peace I had found, the family I had chosen, and the knowledge that I had broken the cycle of abandonment that could have defined my entire life. I thought that chapter with Dad was permanently closed. I was wrong. Last month I was at work debugging some particularly stubborn code when my phone rang. I almost did not answer because I did not recognize the number, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was one I had not heard in over 3 years. "Chandler, son. It is me. It is Dad." My first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, David?" I had not called him Dad in years, and using his first name felt like putting up a wall between us. What came next was the most pathetic conversation I have ever had in my life. Dad's voice was shaky, desperate in a way I had never heard before. Jessica had left him 6 months earlier, running off with some guy she met at her new job. She took Tyler, who was now 16, and cleaned out half their bank accounts in the process. Amber, now 32, wanted nothing to do with her stepfather, calling him weak and pathetic for how he had treated his own son. His construction business had collapsed during the economic downturn. He was facing foreclosure on the house, the same house where Jessica had convinced him to throw me away all those years ago. He was alone, broke, and desperate, and suddenly the son he had abandoned was looking like his only lifeline. "I know I messed up, Chandler," he said, and I could hear tears in his voice. "I know I was wrong to listen to Jessica instead of trusting my own son, but I always loved you. I never stopped loving you." The lies came so easily to him even now. If he had always loved me, where were the birthday cards? Where were the phone calls? Where was he when Grandma Rose was dying and I was taking care of her alone? "I was wondering," he continued, "if maybe we could work on rebuilding our relationship. I know it will take time, but I thought maybe you could help me get back on my feet financially just until I can get the business running again." There it was. After 17 years of silence, the only reason he was calling was because he needed money. I let him finish his whole speech before I responded. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm and controlled in a way that surprised even me. "David, I want you to listen to me very carefully. When I was 11 years old, you threw me away like garbage because your wife told you to. You chose her lies over your own son's truth. You abandoned me on my birthday and never looked back." He tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I spent years wondering what was wrong with me, why I was not good enough for my own father to love me. Grandma Rose worked herself to the bone to take care of me while you played happy family with Jessica and your replacement son. She died taking care of me the way you should have. "Son, please, I know I made mistakes, but family is family. We can fix this." "No, David, we cannot fix this. You made your choice 17 years ago when you decided that keeping Jessica happy was more important than protecting your child. You do not get to come crawling back now that your perfect little family has fallen apart." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for almost a minute. "I am successful now, not because of you, but despite you. I have people in my life who actually care about me. People who would never abandon me when things get tough. That is what real family looks like." "But I am your father," he said weakly. "No, you are not. You are just the man who created me. Grandma Rose was my parent. She was the one who sacrificed for me, believed in me, and loved me unconditionally. You were just the guy who gave up when things got complicated. I could hear him crying now, but I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. Just emptiness where those emotions used to live. The foreclosure papers you are worried about. That is called consequences. Jessica taking your money and leaving. That is called karma. Your daughter wanting nothing to do with you. That is called reaping what you sow. Please, Chandler. I have nowhere else to turn. You should have thought about that before you turned your back on the one person who loved you unconditionally. Goodbye, David. I hung up the phone and sat in my office chair for a long time, staring out at the San Francisco Bay. Sarah found me there an hour later, still processing everything that had happened. How do you feel? She asked, settling into the chair next to my desk. Free, I said, and I meant it. For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely free. We spent that evening talking about our wedding plans, about the kids we want to have someday, about the kind of parents we want to be. We talked about how we will never make our children choose between parents, how we will believe them when they tell us something is wrong, how we will protect them from people who want to hurt them. The next morning, I deleted David's number from my phone and blocked him on all social media platforms. I do not need updates on his life, and he does not deserve access to mine. Some people might think I should forgive him, that family is family regardless of what happens. Those people have probably never been abandoned by a parent who was supposed to protect them. Forgiveness does not mean you have to let toxic people back into your life. It just means you stop letting their choices poison your future. I learned something important from Grandma Rose during those years she raised me. She taught me that family is not just about blood relations. Family is about the people who show up for you when things get hard, who believe in you when you do not believe in yourself, who love you not because they have to, but because they choose to every single day. David made his choice 17 years ago. Now I have made mine. Sarah and I are getting married next spring. We are planning to start a family in a few years, and when we do, our children will never wonder if they are loved. They will never have to earn their place in our hearts, or worry about being thrown away when life gets complicated. They will know what real family looks like. Sometimes the best thing a parent can teach their child is what not to do. David taught me that lesson perfectly. As I finish telling you this story, I want you to know that if you are dealing with family members who have abandoned or mistreated you, it is okay to protect yourself. You do not owe anyone access to your life just because you share DNA with them. Some bridges are meant to be burned. What do you think about this situation? Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members? Or do you believe parents always deserve second chances, no matter what they have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and please hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Do not forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Remember, the family you choose is often stronger than the family you are born into, and that is perfectly okay. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you make the right choices for your own life. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember that you deserve people who will fight for you, not people who will throw you away when things get tough.